No. The great Ronald Royal, J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Follow me to Oxford on an ill-fated walk where I explain why it was entirely inevitable that this man write the genre-defining masterpieces that are The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Let's go to Oxford. I had the great idea to travel to Oxford and walk from Tolkien's favorite pub to his gravesite. It felt like a great idea at the time. It was my first time in the city and I arrived late. But all of this will fit perfectly into what I want to tell you about the great author himself. As you can see, it all started out okay. I had not much time when I arrived in Oxford, so I hurried to the pub or pubs because Tolkien had two favorite pubs. The one is now under construction, the other one is open. And then I started walking. John Ronald Royal Tolkien was born in 1892 in South Africa. His father worked there for a bank, and his mother, Mabel, hated it. She wanted to go back to Middle England, to the Midlands. It got so bad that the two of them struck a deal. Mabel would move back to England, and Tolkien's father would join them after he finished everything he had to do in South Africa. So Mabel took the little Ronald and his even younger brother Hilary back to the Midlands. And like his mother Mabel, Ronald loved the Midlands. This was his Hobbitland. But the first tragedy struck little Ronald pretty soon. His father died before he could reunite with his family in England. So Ronald and his brother Hilary grew up without a father in the beautiful little village called Sarhole Mill. Because young Ronald was such an exceptional bright student, his mother wanted the very best education for him. And that's why they had to move to the city. Also, she was a Catholic, which was rather unusual, and she wanted to be close to a church she could attend. So they moved to Birmingham. And this was like being chased out of paradise for young Ronald, because Birmingham was a city and industrialization was going on. This loss of nature, this loss of this idyllic paradise felt to him like a looming destructive force. Around this time, Tolkien was about 12. And soon after they moved to the city, the next tragedy struck. His mother Mabel died. And now Ronald and his younger brother Hilary were orphans. The both of them became wards of a Catholic priest and had to live with aunts who were rather horrible to them. But as so often with Tolkien, after the tragedy, there happened something magical. He met another orphan, a girl named Edith, and the two of them fell in love. Really, really fell in love. This was the big one. But of course, they lived under very strict religious rules, and they were forbidden from being together until Tolkien was of age. This meant they had to wait 3 years, not only to be together, but to be in contact with each other. But Ronald was a very peculiar boy. He took this order of no contact and you can be together after 3 years as a challenge accepted moment. He said, okay, I'm very into learning. I'm a nerd anyway, so I will be a full-time nerd in these 3 years. And after these 3 years, I will marry Edith. And that is what he did. The two of them had almost no contact for 3 years. In this time, he very passionately studied. He had a passion for languages, but also for myths. So he had a great love for languages and legends, like Beowulf or like the Norse sagas. He just focused on learning. Soon he began to start to invent his own languages. Little break here. As you can see, I was walking pretty happily through beautiful Oxford. Oxford is not only a town where there are these super old university buildings, people also just live there. And of course, they work there because the university is not only a place to study, but it's a huge employer. And I did not think that my path to Tolkien, to the master of fantasy, to the man who invented Hobbit land, that I would walk on a very heavy trafficked street at rush hour. So I started out in a very idyllic city center, and then the traffic got heavier and heavier and heavier. But back to Tolkien. So Tolkien promised Edith We see each other in 3 years and then we will be together. And he focuses on learning languages. And he also starts to invent languages. At the same time, he and all his friends are very aware that Britain is under threat because we are now in the time before World War I. Even in school, the children are prepared that there will be conflict. Can you imagine going to school and your teachers prepare you for a war that will be coming, especially as a boy, because you know you almost certainly will have to fight. And that is exactly what happens. So after Tolkien finishes his studies, after he finishes school, he joins the forces and he goes to war. He fights in World War I, and he is part of the bloodiest and darkest episodes of World War I. But he survives. But when he comes back, he learns that 2 of his dear friends have died, have fallen in war. After 3 years, Tolkien wants to get his girl. And then he learns that Edith is already betrothed. And he thinks, and he contacts her. And she said, dude, we haven't been in touch for 3 years straight. How would I have known that you really meant it? I didn't think that you were for real. And Tolkien was like, of course I am for real. What kind of person do you think I am? I invent languages in my free time. I'm paraphrasing, of course. So he said, woman, I'm here. Let's get married. And Edith said, all right, let's do this. So she broke up with her fiance and married Ronald. At this time, Tolkien starts also to write poetry. And when his friends ask him, what is your poetry all about? He answers in a really lovely way, I think. He answers, I don't know, I'll try to find out. So after the war, he needs work. And his first job is working on a dictionary. I think it was the letter Q he worked on. Soon after that, he gets a teaching position. And after some time, he finally becomes a professor in Oxford. And as you can see, I finally arrived at the cemetery. And this cemetery is in a lovely way, not very extraordinary, not flashy, not grandiose. And if you take a little walk across the cemetery, you will find Tolkien's grave. There are little markers, and then you are in front of the grave of J.R.R. Tolkien and his wife Edith. And you can see the inscription. It says Luthien and Beren, which are, of course, his wife and himself. He saw the 2 of them as a great romantic couple for the history, and I think they really are. Because in Oxford, they had a really great life. Not that their marriage was without issues. As far as I understood it, Edith was not always very happy because they had problems like every other couple. But all in all, they had a very peaceful, meaningful, loving life in Oxford. Tolkien had many friends. He and Edith had 3 kids. He loved teaching, and of course, he had this beautiful writing career. So his children were the reason why he started creating fantasy stories in the first place. Without Tolkien's children, there would be no Hobbit. And when The Hobbit was published, it was very successful. And his publisher said, come on, J.R.R., give us more, give us another Hobbit. And Tolkien said, okay, all right, I will do it. And then he wrote The Lord of the Rings for 12 years. So when you put the 2 books right next to each other, you see what Tolkien meant when he said he don't know what he's writing about. He's trying to find out. So it was not just an easy follow-up, but this path of writing the second part to The Hobbit led him to the whole world. He created a whole world. And I think if you look at his life, on everything he went through, he not only experienced the death of both of his parents and the loss of his beloved Midlands, he also lost 2 of his very dear friends to war and experienced the horrible darkness of war itself. And add to this his love, his passion for languages, for myths and legends, and of course his great love for Edith. And then having these peaceful years as a beloved teacher in Oxford, all of this comes together in this great epic novel that is The Lord of the Rings. And maybe fitting to this part of Tolkien's life, I on the next day was rewarded with a sunny morning in beautiful Oxford. So I took a stroll to Merton College, where Tolkien taught as a professor. And I thought I got a little glimpse of the peacefulness and meaningfulness of this town for this great man who redefined the fantasy genre and gifted us a whole world millions of people love to live in our heads. And to break all this super positive projection I put on Oxford, I wanted to tell you which picture stuck with me the most from reading The Lord of the Rings. And for me, it is the Eye of Sauron. Maybe it is because I grew up Catholic as well, but I think this is such a great image even today, or maybe especially today. Anyway, what aspect of Lord of the Rings sticks with you the most? What image do you get from time to time that you got from reading Tolkien's work? Please comment down below. I really would like to know. And with this, I see you next time with an uncanny story about a place you can travel to. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.